All control. Gravity is all that I know. She's over me. She's over me. She comes me with her hypnotic dance. She holds me here with only a glance. She's over me. She's over me. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and you are in the portal at this very moment. And these are the Night Terrors. These are the Night Terror shows, our Sunday night show, and also on Thursday, Sunday and Thursday nights, where we do a shorter version of the Paranormal Portal. Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday are 2-hour shows, so we do 1-hour shows on these other nights just to keep it fresh and fun and interesting and to give me another excuse to connect with you guys, really. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line of it. I love to reach out and get involved and to be a part of your nights and such. So this is my way of doing that. Sorry, I just got to get everything tweaked here, make sure everything's all lining up, as it were. But welcome to the show. And just so you know, and at any point during the night, during our show tonight, if you want to connect, call in and connect with us, you're certainly welcome to do that. And you can call in at 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. Those are the numbers for fun here on the Paranormal Portal. And if you got something paranormal that you'd like to share, if you have something that you wanted to discuss, I'm here. And that's all fair, fun, and game. I had a great show today. I was a guest on the Infinite Fringe with Billy Ray on TFR Live earlier today, just a couple hours ago, as a matter of fact, and had a great time with him. It was only an hour show. It went so quickly. I don't know if I hogged the mic or not, but I was trying. We had a great discussion. We really did. Talked about a lot of different things, not just the paranormal, but talked about society and all that stuff. It was a great time. So if you haven't ever checked out Billy Ray's show, check it out. It's the Infinite Fringe, and you can find it on tfrlive.com. And he's a great guy, just a really cool guy. And he's from New York. He's from like Brooklyn or the Bronx. I think it was the Bronx. And he's got the serious, it's not real hard. He's got a real soft New York accent, but I just love that accent. It's so cool. So I was talking with him and had a good time on there. So Billy, if you're out there listening, thank you so much for having me on. It was indeed a pleasure. I really enjoyed myself and had a great time talking with you. And we're going to get Billy on the portal, come over and give us a visit and chat some paranormal. So he's actually a big fan of the paranormal, he said, and he would love to come on the show. So we'll get him over here and introduce you guys to him directly if you didn't catch the show earlier. I kind of posted it last minute, and that's, it wasn't really intentional, but it wasn't not intentional. It was just like, well, I don't need to fly a flag every time I go somewhere, that kind of thing. I think that, hey, wait, look, more looking at me. I'm going to be over here. It feels kind of like self-serving. So I didn't want that, to be the way that came across. And so I didn't post about it too much before the show, but I thought, well, what the hell? I love you guys and I love it when we hang out. Even though I'm the one doing all the talking, it's still nice to know you guys are there. And so I did post it just about 10 minutes prior to the show and had a good time. So once again, thank you, Billy Ray, for having me on. It was a lot of fun. And I don't know about you, but I guess it's time to get started with the show. So I hope you're ready because it's time for bed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is it. We are now underway, so I hope you're all buckled in safely, covered with a duvet or blanket. Have a libation of your choice. Turn the lights down, lit the candles, and are ready for an adventure of the paranormal kind. At least that's my plan. I hope it works out that way. But I got some stories pulled up for you guys, and hopefully we'll keep you wildly entertained through the journey tonight. And the first one that I've got ready for you is coming from Pennsylvania. And we talk a lot about Ohio, and Ohio certainly has a lot of things going on. But I got to tell you, the more and more that I look into it, the more I realize that Pennsylvania's got a lot of stuff going on over there too. That's home of Tony Merkel. He lives over there, the Confessionals podcast, of course. And they got a lot of stuff going on. They got a lot of Bigfoot stuff going on. They got a lot of weird paranormal stuff, cryptid stuff, ghost stuff, UFO stuff. I mean, they got all the bases covered over there too. So I don't know. Maybe it's just everywhere. Maybe everywhere has a lot going on, but there's just some locations where people are more willing to talk about it than others. And that could be it. I don't know. But Pennsylvania is where this one's coming from, and it has to do with apparitions, voices, and touches. So let's see what's going on in Pennsylvania. It says this happened around 1953 in Upper Dublin Township, Pennsylvania, at the Fitzwater Cemetery, Twining Road. This cemetery has a large stone wall around it, about 4 or 5 feet high. And I was riding my horse past the cemetery as I was heading home like I normally do. I lived up the hill from the cemetery about 500 yards. And in the woods, my horse was always skittish going past the cemetery around dusk. This evening, she was especially skittish and had her ears up, her body and head turned, and was sidestepping. I looked over at the cemetery and I saw a young lady sitting on the favorite big tombstone everyone likes to sit on. This young lady waved to me, so I waved back. I smiled and yelled over to her, "Hi," and she smiled back. As we watched, her raised hand started to evaporate at the top and continued on down her arm, and then the rest of her just slowly vanished. Ooh, that's weird. Well, this raised the hair on the back of my neck, and goosebumps ran all the way down my spine. We crossed the road quickly and up the dirt bank, and I turned my horse towards home, and we ran the rest of the way. Since then, we would give the cemetery a wide path, and my horse was still always skittish going past, but we never saw the young girl after that. And that's certainly the truth. I mean, the animals really are tuned into this stuff naturally. I don't know if it has to do with them being so much more receptive to energy shifts or changes, or if there's really just something that's awkward about a spiritual presence. Like maybe it really radiates in the whole area. It's not just a specific area where the apparition is, but maybe it really has a wide berth on it. I don't know. I find that just fantastically amazing. I think the actions of this apparition were pleasant. They didn't sound. I mean, of course, it's scary to see someone evaporate. I can't imagine that's probably very easy to do. And I don't mean to downplay that, but if you're going to see a spirit, one that smiles and waves, I think that's pretty awesome. You don't want the one that's scowling and, glaring at you, showing teeth or something. That's the one I don't want to see. But if I have to see an apparition, a young lady waving and smiling sounds fantastic. You don't always know what you're seeing. This is the representation that you're seeing, but is that really what it is? I don't know. It's anybody's guess on these things, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know. I still ponder that whole cemetery connections. I don't know why so many people seem to linger, or at least a part of them lingers near the body. I don't know what that is. But again, I do think there's a fracturing that happens at the time of our passing. Some of it maybe just life force that was left over that wasn't actually used in the course of the lifetime, especially on a young person. I think that they probably, I don't know that we come into this world with a battery, so to speak, but when you think about it, our genetics are kind of a battery, and as we age, the battery hits different cycles, and that's why the wrinkles start forming, the hair starts going white or gray or whatever, and hairlines recede, and all that fun stuff that comes with getting older. But I don't know. I don't know. I'm gonna have to really write my ideas down about this and put it in a book form, because I got a lot of ideas about what could be going on in situations like this, but it's hard to just ad lib with any kind of clarity. So I have mentioned my ideas on other shows, and so if you're familiar with the show, you've probably heard them anyway. But it's just strange to me. I wonder why some people seem to linger with their body, or if it's just a fraction of them that lingers with the body. Again, I don't pretend to know for sure, but I got some pretty strong ideas on it. So very cool. Again, if you got to see an apparition, a waving young lady, she did evaporate, but she seemed happy, so I guess that's a good one to see. Let's continue on. And the next one we're going to hit tonight is coming from the state of New York. This has to do with apparitions, voices, and touches. Apparitions, voices, and touching. Touches, not touching. That sounded way more adult than I meant it. All right, let's continue before I say something stupid again. All right, this is my first post. My name is Dan, and I'm 18 years old. My story begins with me home alone on a Wednesday night. My parents usually go out, so I'm used to being home alone. I remember I was watching TV when I heard the distinct sounds of someone walking through the hallway upstairs. I was in the basement at the time, and I literally stopped breathing when I heard them, because I would have heard if my parents had come home. And besides, they just left. I have no pets either, so just could not account for the sound of these footsteps. I turned off the TV and slowly started walking up the stairs. At this point, there was still someone there. It was as if someone was walking back and forth through the hallway. As I reached the top of the basement steps, I quickly jumped out to see if anybody was there. But there was nobody there. But I stopped again because the hallway was very cold. I'd been up there a while ago, and it was normal. It was warm. I believe in ghosts, so I immediately jumped to that conclusion. I was really freaked out. So I went back downstairs, and as soon as I lay back down on the couch, I heard them again. But this time, I stayed lying on the couch, turned up the volume on the TV, and eventually they just stopped, and I was relieved. Yeah, that's pretty odd. I don't understand the whole pacing thing. Why are they pacing back and forth? And it's got to be just to get attention. In this case, it's just got to be to get attention. It seemed intelligent. Again, the whole idea behind residual and intelligent haunting. Residual is just kind of a recording that replays. Doesn't seem to have any acknowledgement of the living. And I know MCAT has some great ideas about this as well. He and I have talked about it, and he's posted some of his thoughts on his paranormal page on Facebook. But the intelligent haunt, of course, acknowledges or seems to target the people that are present. The activity seems to really be focused towards those people. In this case, it seems like it wanted to be heard. When the person went upstairs and jumped into the hallway, it all stopped. So that's an intelligent response. It stopped as soon as the person was present. So it's kind of hard to understand what is the motivation. Could it be evil? Sure. Could it be dark? Yeah, it could be, because it's trying to create fear. But it could be just someone going, hey, I'm here. Thank God you're finally noticing me. I don't want to freak you out, so I'm going to stop until you go back down. I don't know. But then it continued again when the person went back downstairs. So that's the conundrum of it. And it's hard to extrapolate an intention just based on, one activity. You would really need to look at the whole whole cycle of it. And even then, ladies and gentlemen, we oftentimes jump to, it scares me, so it's evil. And that's not the case. I really don't believe that that's nearly the case as much as some people would believe. They think that if anything paranormal happens, it's meant to terrify them and it's bad, and get some holy water and get to work. But I don't think that that's the case. I just think that their options are so limited on what they can do. Obviously, they don't seem to be able to vocalize very often, and maybe only certain ones can, or certain abilities are present in some of these and not in others. I don't know. But the one thing they seem to be able to do consistently is mess with electronics. They seem to be able to create sounds. We have a lot of claims. And they could just be auditory hallucinations that they're able to induce. Just because you hear those sounds does not mean that there's actually weight interacting with the floor. On the other hand, we do have many, many stories of people in beds feeling the bed depress when something sits down, or people observing a chair depress as if there's the weight of somebody on it. So they do seem to be able to simulate a physical presence, but I don't know that all these auditory things are actually physically induced. I think that many of them are probably almost telepathic, that they project that sound idea to our head or something. Because I don't think that takes a lot of energy. And of course, there's another speculation. Spirits can't do too much because it requires a lot of energy. Well, who knows? Who knows how much it requires? I mean, we just don't know that much about it. We don't know how much energy they have, or if they're in a deficit, or if they're always in an abundance of energy. We don't know anything. We just assume. But just because you hear something doesn't mean that it's happened. And I would defer to, many times on the show, we've heard claims of people that are hearing like dishes exploding in the kitchen and flying out of cupboards and doors slamming and stuff. And they go right around the corner and look at their kitchen and it's fine. There are people walking together, and one, or like say it's three people, one or two will hear a very clear voice announcing something, the third person won't, or only one of them, or all three. So obviously, if it was a physical noise, all of them should have heard it, or at least heard something of it. But in many cases, only one, or one part of the party will be aware of anything having happened. So just some thoughts on that. Yeah, it's hard to know what's going on there, but this just seems to be an attention kind of thing to me. And just from the narrative of the story, that's pretty much all we can deduce. I can't say, oh my God, get a priest. It's going to get ugly. I don't believe that that's the case, but I could be wrong. I don't know. All right, let's go to the next one. And this one is coming from Ohio. This has to do with family and friends visits. And there's Ohio again, ladies and gentlemen. Great to see all you guys in here tonight. Thank you all for joining us. It's fantastic to look up and see that's getting to be a full house. That's an absolute honor. Okay, so Ohio. In the old house where my mom grew up across the road that we lived on, there is a rocking chair on the front porch. My grandmother, as I'm told, used to love to sit and wait for my mom and uncle to come home from school. I love to walk to the old house and explore in it. One day I decided to play on the porch, and it was a nice day, no wind whatsoever blowing, and as I got to the edge of our lawn and was about ready to cross, I noticed the rocking chair was rocking very gently, as if someone had just sat down on it. As I walked into the middle of the road, it started rocking a little faster. Well, I wasn't scared at the time, just more curious than anything, so I stopped and said, "Grandma, if that's you, can you rock a bit faster?" Well, the chair did rock a bit faster, and I walked closer, and the chair started rocking faster and faster and faster. Now, I wasn't exactly afraid. In a weird way, I was happy, and then said, "Grandma, do you want to tell me something, or do you need something?" Well, the chair tipped over, and something wrapped up in a piece of paper fell to the floor. I picked it up and unwrapped the paper only to reveal a locket. I ran home and pried the locket open, and there was a picture of my grandmother when she was my age. Can someone help me to find out what she is trying to tell me? I don't mean to laugh, but I think the grandma wanted you to have the locket. I think that's the whole meaning. That's called an apport, APPORT. It's basically a spiritual gift, a gift from a spirit, and I think those objects are incredibly profound because they have been manifested. They have possibly been bilocated, but they, at the very least, have been manifested. There are some really bizarre apport stories out there, people having coins manifest and rain down. Even antique coins that shouldn't even have been around have showed up. Just some incredibly profound things. And I think that they are amazing. This is an object, if the claims are true, and I have to assume at least some of them are. I hope more, but maybe not. But if some of them are true, this is an object that has been dematerialized and materialized. I don't know how else to say it, or at least the vibration was changed enough to move it out of phase with our reality, and then re-vibrated into phase with our reality. I'm not saying it was like broken down like a Star Trek transporter, but it was shifted. I don't know how else to say it. And that to me is incredible. And that's the kind of stuff that I think, that is important for people to study, to try to understand what could happen, how could that happen, what did happen, in order for those conditions to be met, to change a physical object from, I assume, one location to that location at that time for that girl. And what a profound thing that is. And that's being done, we can only assume, by conscious energy. It's not a contraption. It's not a build of some kind of technology. It is a spiritual transition of matter into the physical, out of the physical, and then back into the physical as we understand it. And I think that is so profound. I mean, my God, what kind of abilities do we have, but we don't even know? We know that we use like 10% of our brain, 15%, whatever. Depends on, where you're hearing the information from. But at any rate, a very low percentage of our ability. We're using a very low percentage of the ability, which is inherent in us. And that, I guess, after we pass, maybe we become aware of those abilities again. And I don't mean brain as in it has the physical function, but I think that our brains are somehow, I don't know, channeling a conscious energy. I don't know for sure, because there's a lot of things to do with that. Now, we equate brains with thinking, thoughts, memories, all of those things. And we certainly can observe that people that have had brain injuries lose some of those faculties. Alzheimer's, dementia is a damaging of the brain. But is that because it's a physical mechanism, or is it because it is the mechanism by which those spiritual abilities are brought into our realm? I don't know. Just throwing it out there. But I would say that the brain and condition of the brain in and of itself are not necessarily measures of cognitive ability or awareness, because there's been many people, there's been many scientifically documented cases of people with a condition called hydrocephaly. And hydrocephaly is pretty grossly called waterheads. It's a condition where there's a buildup of fluid in the cerebral cavity of people when they're born or in their formation, and they'll be born with just in some cases just a small layer of brain matter on the inside of their head. And yet there are many cases of those people going on to have normal IQs, live normal lives to a degree. And so the brain doesn't appear to be the the completion of that. It just seems to be a channel or something, some mechanism by which that's brought into being. Now, I'm a firm believer in the spirit, so of course that's my tendency to lean that way, and maybe some scientifically minded people would disagree with that, and that's fine. I don't share my opinions because I'm trying to convince, nor want convincing of anything else. This is where I'm at, but it's interesting. So when you have an object that has been moved from one place to another by unfamiliar means, that's an incredibly amazing thing. That is almost miraculous, if not miraculous. To me it is. But anyway, that's my thoughts on that. So I think that those objects are incredible. When they do appear, I have received an apport, which I believe was from my grandfather, and it was just an agate, but it was just how it showed up. It was just so bizarre. And it's very precious to me because of that. So if you ever found things that you don't understand how they got there, you might have gotten an apport as well. Just putting it out there. All right, let's go to the next one. The next story is, this one sounds dark. It's coming from Alabama. Has to do with haunted places, but it says, it was mid-November of last year when our lead investigator in training, a lead investigator in training, Josh, gave me a call and told me that he had a place that we could check out. His grandfather owns the house, which he calls the Hell House. He calls it that because he says it's not just a normal haunting, but it's something demonic. And Josh told me that reports would range from his grandfather seeing people in the house disappearing, including his recently deceased wife, who he would see with another man, and things moving around in other rooms, shadows darting in and out of doorways, and even one time he sat a cup of coffee on his coffee table and it actually started to boil on the table. Yeah, that's not normal. Well, we got the okay to stay the night there. We had no power because Josh's grandfather refused to stay in the place, so we had nothing but flashlights. Well, we got to the house at about 11:30 that night, and from what Josh's grandfather had told us, he said nothing would happen until about 1 a.m. We found out the hard way that he wasn't kidding. Well, we all just goofed off and stuff for a while until the time neared 1 a.m. We could slowly but surely start to see our breath as it got closer to 1 a.m. So we thought that was really weird. Josh had brought his laptop, so he stayed in the back room and was messing around with it, while Sean and I walked around the house and explored. It was a fairly large house. Sean and I were on the other end, opposite of Josh, and the next thing we know, Josh is yelling at us, "What are you guys doing in there?" We walked back out of the hallway and replied, "We're just looking around in these rooms." And they said, "Are you both back there?" And "Yeah, man," Sean replied. And the next thing I know, Josh is yelling at us to get in there. Well, he told us that the room next to the room he was in, he heard what sounded like someone knocking on the wall. And he thought it was one of us. And well, that got us excited. So we decided to start investigating. So we go to the living room and we sit down. Sean and Josh sat down on the couch, and I sat down on Josh's grandfather's recliner opposite side of the room. And we had all the lights out, so I decided to take a few pictures with my digital camera. So I took a few behind me and down the hallway and stuff, and Josh tells me to take a picture of them on the couch because he felt like something was near him. So I moved my camera to where it's looking at them, and Sean had an audio recorder, so it had a red light on the end of it, and the camera picked up the red light. Well, above Josh's head, there was 2 more red lights. And it looked like eyes, as if some kind of animal or something was sitting on top of the couch directly above his head. I told them about it, and Josh yelled at me to take the picture, so I pressed the button, and my camera dies. I quickly replace the batteries and I look back through the camera at them, and this time there weren't just 2 red dots above his head, there were several. So I snapped a picture really fast. Everything went dark after the camera flashed, and dang, that was bright, wasn't it, Josh? Sean asked. And there was no reply. I turned on my flashlight and shined it at him, and he had the hood of his jacket pulled down over his face to where you couldn't see his eyes, and he was breathing heavily. I ran over there and stood over him. Josh, what are you doing, man? I asked in a worried tone. He started breathing really weird at this point. What do we do? Sean asked, so I figured the best thing we could do was pray, because I was positive he was being possessed. Pray, I yelled as I slammed my hand onto his forehead. Sean joined me and we started to pray for him. Well, in the middle of my prayer, I suddenly got the sensation, which I can only explain as feeling like someone was pressing 1,000,000 needles into my head. I prayed until I couldn't stand the feeling anymore, so I let go. I've got to get the hell out of here, I yelled as I grabbed my head. I remember pacing back and forth. What's wrong? Sean asked as he kept his hand on Josh's head. My head, I replied. I ran for the door and flung it open, and I kind of remember saying, we need to get his grandfather, but it's all a blur in my head from that point. And this is where it gets weird. I remember walking out onto the porch, one step onto the porch, before Josh said, it's okay, come here. So I turned right around and walked back inside. Well, when we were talking about the experience after it happened, Sean gave me a grim look and he said I walked out onto the porch and paced back and forth for a good 5 minutes. I only remember walking out and then walking back in. Well, we got Josh some water and we asked him what had happened. He told us he closed his eyes to avoid being blinded by the flash of the camera, and when he did, he couldn't open them. Then he told us that he saw his deceased grandmother standing in front of him in the room with us, and she said, Josh, honey, you kids need to leave. And then he said, once I stood up and started walking towards him, the voice turned deep and more demanding. Leave now, it yelled. I actually looked at the picture and I zoomed in on Josh, and right to his right side, exactly where I had stepped to start praying for him, was a very, very distinct orb. Stranger from every orb I've ever seen, so I figured this thing was trying to possess my friend. And once I stepped in the way, part of that started to mess with me, giving me the needles in my head sensation. We thought it was weird that Sean hadn't felt anything weird from it. Well, it turns out, when my sister heard we were going to the house with demonic activity, she gave us a few cross necklaces, both of which Sean had in his hands during the whole event. So we walked through the house one last time and started saying prayers over each and every room. We could actually feel the coldness retreating away from us as we said each one. We packed up and left for the night, and we're hoping to try to stay again one night. Neither Josh or I wanted to stay much longer after that incident. Yeah, that's dangerous stuff. Again, I don't know if this is a true story or not. I really don't know. But what I can tell you is that I really do believe that when you go looking for things, you really don't know what you're looking for, and you don't know what's there. It's not really that different from using a Ouija board. It's like you're putting it out there that you want to make contact with something. And so something might just answer you, but you might not like the answer. I don't know. I don't think it's, something to be, afraid of. If investigating is your passion, then do it. But just, I think you got to be aware of the risks, and you've got to be prepared to protect yourself. So just some thoughts on that, but what a bizarre story. Okay, let's go to the next one. Is coming from Texas. This has to do with family and friends visits. So the deceased visiting. On Billy Ray's show tonight, I shared the story, a quick version of the story of my dad. after he passed, and some of the activity that he's been up to since then. At least we believe it's him. But some very, very profound stuff for sure. It's just, I just think about the number of things that happen in quick succession that individually the odds of them happening by chance are astronomical. But combined, it's off the charts. It's just amazing. And I find comfort in those things. I really do. I think that it's an affirmation from, my father. He's okay. He's still around. He's still, keeping an eye on things. And I think that that's comforting. I think that's really cool. And it's comforting to know that, my mom is not alone, But, it's never dark. It's never spooky or creepy. It's just him letting her know she's around, letting us know he's around. So it's the lovely, lovely deal. I think that those visits are amazing. So let's read this story and find out what happened here. So this happened in the summer of 1982 at a time in my life I was married with 3 young children. My oldest, John, was about 7 years old, living down the street from my parents. My children visited almost every day and grew very close to them. John was especially close to my dad and spent many hours with him from the time he could walk. My dad would take John to the garage and teach him how to use tools and give him a paintbrush and a bucket of water to let him paint any wood lying in the scrap pile. That's creative. My dad also encouraged him to assist in building bird houses by handing him the appropriate tools. And although I knew my dad loved my 2 younger children, there was a special bond between him and my oldest. 5 years earlier, my dad suffered a heart attack and became semi-retired, so there was lots of time spent nurturing my children. During the next few years, my dad suffered 2 more heart attacks, as well as being diagnosed with diabetes and emphysema. We found out after his death, the doctors informed him he didn't have long on this earth. But he never shared that with the rest of the family. In July of 1982, my mom called me and told me that they had taken Dad to the hospital and he had a massive heart attack and he was in the intensive care ward. My sisters and I spent many hours by his side talking to him and holding his hand, and we never knew if he heard us or because he never regained consciousness. During his second week in the hospital, we were told he probably wouldn't last many more days and major organs were now shutting down. I'd been at the hospital 2 days straight when my husband watched the kids at home, and at the encouragement of one of his nurses, I decided to go home and just get a good night's rest before returning to the hospital the next morning to relieve my sister of her nursing duties. I left that evening at about 7 p.m. and arrived home to find my children anxious to know how Grandpa was doing. John especially listened intently as I explained that Grandpa was probably going to be with Jesus soon. Well, John began to cry, and I hugged him to give him some motherly support, but found myself crying right along with him. A short while later, I got my 2 youngest into bed for the night and told John it was time for him to get his PJs on and hop into bed as well. I told him I needed to take a shower and I would be in shortly to tuck him in. Well, I showered quickly, dressed, and went into John's bedroom, and while I walked in, he sat up quickly, furrowed his brow, and asked, "Why did you kiss me with wet lips?" I explained to them that I just walked into the room and he must have fallen asleep and was dreaming. He was very emphatically told me he closed his eyes to say his prayers and asked Jesus to take care of Grandpa when he got to heaven and was not asleep. He said, "I felt you breathe on my cheek and then you kissed me with wet lips. Why'd you do that?" At exactly that moment, my telephone rang, and I ran to the living room to answer it, and on the other end was the nurse at the hospital telling me my dad had just passed away a few minutes earlier. I think I knew at that moment the kiss must have been my dad saying goodbye to his closest grandson. I went back into John's room and told him Grandpa was now in heaven with Jesus And his prayer was a really good one. Grandpa was proud of him for asking Jesus to care for him. And he must have been the one that left that wet kiss on his cheek on his way up to heaven. A huge smile came on his face, and he seemed extremely pleased with himself. For many years, my son would tell me he had dreams about Grandpa and how they talked and laughed just like they did when he was really here. My son is now 35 and still talks about that night. It's as real to him now as it was 27 years ago. We both truly believe it was my dad saying his final goodbye with a kiss. Oh, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful story. I just can't think of anything more awesome than to have that kind of closure, that kind of moment. And I had to, I was fortunate enough to see my dad in my dream. And it was really cool because, he and I, we were both incredibly stubborn. Well, I still am, but he was. I don't know. I think he's much more laid back now, but we had one of those relationships where we knew there was a lot of love between us, but it was just, we didn't know how to be together very well, and it is what it is. I mean, I felt bad after he passed because those are definitely things that I would have said to him. I would have apologized for my stubbornness and for not being so difficult and trying to be a better son. But I had that dream. And in that dream, I was standing there with him. And that's what I told him. I said, I'm so sorry I wasn't a better son. And he apologized to me for not being a better dad. And then we had this beautiful embrace. And it was just so amazing. It was just like, wow. So in that moment, I believe it's real. I mean, it was the most real dream I've ever had. I've had a few with him since then, but it was the most beautiful dream. And to know AJ, same here with me and my dad. Very cool. Very cool, AJ. Thanks for sharing that. But it was the healing that I needed in order to let him go. Because it's always that way when those things happen. It's like, oh, I never got a chance to say that. Never had a chance to, to make that final step to heal those old wounds. And I was thinking, God, I'm going to have to carry this for the rest of my life, that regret. But I didn't have to. That we were able to have that moment in the dream. So I'd pay attention to your dreams if there's somebody that you love and is real close to you that passed. If you see them in the dream, in your dreams, I think that's very real. I do. I really do. And not normal weird dreams. I'm talking about if it's a real lucid experience. I think that those are incredibly powerful. So, yeah, I feel very, very fortunate that I had that experience. And it's funny because my dad, I remember as he was fading, he was homebound and stuff. And I'd gone to visit and I was trying to talk to him about the show because it's something I'm always excited about. And I figure, well, we had a talk. I was like, are you ready? Are you okay? And he goes, I can't live like this. I can't live like this. My dad was a busy person. He was the kind of person that had 3 jobs like his whole life. He always worked and he loved working. It wasn't a labor to him. It wasn't like he took joy in it. I'd never seen a guy take more joy in his yard. His grass was just always just so. And if there's any patch of grass that wasn't just so, he'd be gutting it and seeding it and watering it until it was just so. I mean, he was so meticulous about it. And he was so meticulous about a lot of things. He really took care of his things. And he took a lot of pride in those things. I think he came from not much. So when he had things, it was so important to him to care for those things because he'd grown up without it. And so, he was that way. He was a busy person. So when he couldn't be, it was torture for him. It was not a homebody. He was not a couch guy. He'd work himself to exhaustion and then come in, grab something to eat, and sit in his chair and fall asleep. That was what he loved. And, that was cool. But it was hard on him. And I tried to tell him about my show just because we were having a talk, and, it was just a neat moment while he was still around. I tried to tell him about my experience seeing a UFO, and you can see his eyes just immediately glossed over. He was looking everywhere. He was not paying attention at all. He didn't care at all about that. And I thought it was just the most amazing thing ever, to have seen that. And it was funny that he had that position in his life. But after his passing, he became part of the activity that I talk about. And I think that's so cool. This is a man that couldn't use a remote, and his TV was turning on and doing all this crazy stuff that nobody had ever done on his TV before. So it was just really neat. I don't know. My dad always works, dude. He won't stop. Yeah. It was the same for my dad too, AJ. Very true. And that's cool. That's where some people find their passion is in what they do and how well they do it. And I think that's awesome. But it was just really cool. So I really relate to this story. That's really, really cool. And I feel very blessed to have experienced that. I got to heal that wound and move forward. And that was the gift he gave me. So very, very cool. So for all of you out there, I wish everybody would have those experiences. They are so important, and it's so amazing to not have that mystery, not have that, I hope they're okay. I hope they're okay. I think that's the hardest thing for us when we're dealing with a loss is, are they okay? Is everything okay? We don't know. But in those moments, in those healing moments, we do. When they come and visit us and when they come and share, and that's just incredible. Yeah. Very cool stuff. All right. Duke's getting interviewed. Uh-oh. I don't know what's going on in there in that chat room. But I know we got time for about another story. One more story, folks. And that'll be the night. And then you'll have to wait a couple days before we'll be back. Again, I do apologize for any of you that are listening to the podcast. Hopefully you all are. But I apologize that I haven't released it yet. It's been an incredibly busy day. I was, again, a guest on another show, and so it kind of set my timetable back. But I will be releasing that podcast. My minion is knocking on the door. Little rascal. I will be releasing that podcast after the show here. I'll get it out and get it done so you guys will have that available. But this is the last story for tonight. This is the last story for tonight. Oh. We'll just wait. Okay, so this is coming from Louisiana. Has to do with apparitions, voices, and touches. This is written in 2009, so it says this. It starts out saying, this was about 2 years ago. One day, me and my cousin Charlie went to school on Saturday to play at the school playground. I heard a small childish laugh coming from inside the school. Well, Charlie looked at me and said, "Did you hear that?" she whispered. Oh, you're welcome, Gemini. I appreciate that. Thank you all for listening to my stories. And I looked at her and walked up to the school stairs entrance, and the laugh became stronger. Suddenly, the laugh formed into a scream. I heard footsteps of high heels and boots. A loud bang came from the door, and Charlie and I screamed, and as we saw, the little girl's lifeless body slowly slipped down. That's creepy. Blood from the girl's hands were streaming down, and suddenly a black shadow looked down and walked off. Everything we saw disappeared as if it had never happened, and Charlie and I decided to call the girl Emily. The only features I saw of the girl were red hair and what seemed to be freckles. The next encounter was kind of like deja vu. I decided to go in my bathroom and do the Bloody Mary game. Oh. Well, at the last spin, I saw Emily again, and she smiled at me and said hi and then disappeared. Does anybody know what this means? Because I don't. I'd like to see what you think. Think you might have saw a ghost. I'm just going to go out on a limb there. I don't know. This sounds like it was written by someone younger. It doesn't mean it's not true, but I don't know the whole situation here. I'd be curious to know if there was ever, any history to that school that would corroborate that event as manifesting there, but it's hard to know. But that's about all I know for tonight. I know that I love you guys. I know that I love doing the shows. I know it's going to be 2 days, Monday and Tuesday. I'm, of course, not doing shows, so I hope you guys have a wonderful couple of days. I hope everything goes well at the beginning of your weeks. And I will return on Wednesday with Dawn, and we'll get right back at it. But it's just, I've got to get things done, and that's the only time I can do it. So had to start taking a couple days off a week just to start focusing on development and a million other things that have nothing to do with the show, but it's just life. But anyway, guys, I love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other, help each other out. Find the magic in every day, and remember to laugh as much as you can. And I will see you in a couple days, but you can always reach out to us via email, paranormalportalradio@gmail.com, if you've got something you need to tell me or need some advice, or if you perhaps have a lot of experiences of your own and would like to be a guest on our podcast. Please let me know. I'd love to hear from you. So that's all I got for you tonight. Love you guys. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Be good, and sweet dreams.